Hey, DC Universe Classics fans! Scott ToyGuru Neitlich here, back with another director's commentary on the DC Universe Classics brand, as made by Mattel. We are up to Wave 8, which, wow, this was really kind of, well, for me, very much a centerpiece of the whole brand. It was kind of right in the middle. There were 20 official waves. I wasn't really involved, I think, in the last wave, Wave 20, as much, but this was right in the middle of my tenure on the brand, and this was definitely a watershed wave because it was really the first wave without a major A-lister in it. And, you know, I'm not downplaying Dr. Fate or Hawkgirl or even Gentleman Ghost, but yeah, there was no Superman, no Batman to be found at all in this wave. You know, no Flash, no Green Lantern. We had a lineup of kind of a lot of characters that, you know, casual fans may not have heard of. This was really starting to be that turning point of getting to deep into the DC world and building out the entire universe as promised by the brand name. So, of course, we had Sergeant Steel, shall I say, leading off not Sergeant, this one was Commander Steel, what am I saying? And then Hawkgirl, which, you know, if you're going to go for your A-lister, I mean, at least she did have a lot of prominence from being on the Justice League animated show, so, but still not Batman, still not Superman. Parademon, not just one Parademon, but we actually had two completely different versions of the Parademon. This wasn't just like a variant head or a variant paint job. Both of the Parademons were entirely different. In fact, I think this guy here was fully tooled, if I remember correctly. So, yay Parademons. Vigilante, loaded up with 3 different weapons. Maybe not exactly an appropriate toy for kids, but an appropriate toy for collectors, and DC Universe was definitely a collector-aimed line. Mr. Terrific, one of my personal favorite DC characters. I'll get into that more as we do character-by-character reviews of these figures. Dr. Fate, who, you know, again, was a character that maybe more, you know, well-known than, say, Steel, but still not exactly, again, Flash, Green Lantern, Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, that kind of thing. So, we're getting deep. Gentleman Ghost, the notorious figure that I think fans to this day are convinced that we short-packed, and I'll explain that we did not. Well, I think I just did, but I'll get more into that. And that all brings us to Giganta, the Wonder Woman villainess, who was the Build-A-Figure, the Collect and Connect figure. So, without further ado, let's jump into our A-list outer A-list non-having. I don't even know a word to describe that, but our first wave without an A-lister. All right, we're going to jump in with Gentleman Ghost, our villain. So this was kind of a pairing with Hawkgirl, since Gentleman Ghost is often a villain of the Thanagarians. I mean, he does battle Batman and lots of other characters as well. This was a really cool figure. Gentleman Ghost has had a couple different looks over the years, some of them more colorful than others, and we went with the classic all-white version, mainly because that was really going to be dramatic. You don't see that many completely white action figures out there. You know, K-3PO aside, white tends to be a color that usually looks unfinished. But in this case, yeah, Bill Beneke did an amazing job, especially the way he was able to get the top hat and monocle to work on the figure without a head. I was really impressed. He worked really, really hard on making this work. And, I mean, he popped on shelf. He really did. The fact that he was completely solid white was a big reason that I think he sold quickly. He was not underproduced. And he was also deliberately done so that we could get a Joker body. When people saw the Gentleman Ghost body, a lot of fans were like, oh, yeah, this is perfect. You could use this for the Joker. And yes, that was deliberate. That's why the flower, the boutonniere, was done as a separate piece, so we could swap that out. So we deliberately tooled him knowing we were going to get to the Joker. And he is infamous because he's known as the one who had Giganta's head and the little atom with him. So, Ghostbuster jokes aside, since we were also doing that line, he was a really amazing figure, and he was produced just as much as every other figure in the line. He just looked really cool. We did eventually reissue him with Hawkgirl, and I know that didn't solve the Giganta head issue, which I'll talk about when I get to Giganta, but yeah, he was not short-packed. And neither was Hawkgirl. Every figure in this line had the exact same production run. So yeah, there was no short-packed figure. Some of them just looked cooler. And Hawkgirl was also one of those figures. She's also, there's got a lot of my personal favorites. I mean, I love the Thanagarian figures. I think it's evident from the JLU line that I also worked on, which was chock full of Thanagarians. And when it came time to doing Hawkgirl, there's multiple Hawkgirls out there. There's Kendra and Shiera and etc. This being classics, the decision was to do Shiera first. I actually wanted to do Kendra, especially because she was the Hawkgirl in the comic books at the time, but the Horsemen really pushed to do Shiera, and I was not going to argue with the might of the Four Horsemen because they're amazing. So we did Shiera. And a big part, I think, was also because she was a prominent member of the Justice League Unlimited, which was wrapping up the show at the time. And she was chock full of accessories, including, you'll notice on the bottom left there, the little blue oval, which was our first base. So when we were chopping up Giganta, we realized we had an extra spot. So Hawkgirl got the base, since she was supposed to be kind of the A-lister, recognizable. Maybe in hindsight, we should have put the base with the Parademon, knowing people were going to buy multiples, but it came with Hawkgirl. Her wings also directly came from Hawkman, because I promised the Four Horsemen we would not make them sculpt wings again, since these were incredibly detailed and they said very time-consuming. So we promised to reuse the wings as much as possible. They also got used on Angela in the Masters of the Universe Classics line and so forth. Next up, we have Vigilante, the I wouldn't call him DC's version of the Punisher. He predated, but he's basically a guy who goes around, let's say, shooting people with guns. Not exactly a kid-friendly idea, but for collectors, a major character, and one that wasn't going to be too expensive to do. He didn't have that many new parts. Not the modern one and not the ultra-classic version, but this was kind of the, 80s version of Vigilante. It's the one we wound up doing. We also did not do the cowboy version, as much as I love cowboy action figures. And I really would have liked to have gotten to the cowboy version. But that was sort of a bridge too far, I guess. And this was also the Vigilante that showed up in Arrow a while back. But this obviously predated Arrow, and his popularity just came from, fans knowing who he was from the 80s, and he really did make a very cool figure. He's got a very striking look with the yellow belt and the black outfit, and especially with the red mask covering his eyes. It's definitely got kind of that cool spy look, and like I said, very little tooling, which did help because we used a lot of tooling up on those Parademons, and Gentleman Ghost was also a fully tooled figure. So we had 2 fully tooled figures in this line, which meant we had to find some less expensive figures to help flesh it out in order to have all of the figures needed for the wave. So, yeah, that was Vigilante. All right, next our quasi-A-lister, maybe call him a B-lister, Dr. Fate. Again, one of my favorite figures from the entire line. I love Dr. Fate. I love magical characters. And so I guess Dr. Fate is kind of the DC Doctor Strange. Yeah, I don't want to constantly compare Marvel and DC because they are different, but they have, sort of similar themes in a lot of their characters because, ooh, shocker, comic books, themes, mythology. Now, this was a figure deliberately done to pay homage to the Superpowers line from the 80s. You can see the tag at the top if you want to watch the Superpowers video. But we very, very consciously wanted to do all of the figures from Superpowers, which is why when we were doing Dr. Fate, the deal was that we would do both modern and classic. I would have loved to do Inara, to do the female Dr. Fate. I thought she would have been a great figure, and I was hoping we'd get to her. But unfortunately, again, like the Cowboy Vigilante, that was a bridge too far. But we did get 2 Dr. Fates in there. We got modern Dr. Fate, and we got Superpowers, classic Dr. Fate. And even their accessories were slightly different because we did them in hard yellow versus plastic see-through yellow. So, well, actually, I mean, they were both see-through, but they were different shades of yellow, I guess you could say. Gold versus a more bright, sort of superpowers-y yellow. And the packouts were different, too. We were really conscious of that as we were getting to Wave 6 and 7, of making the variants packed out in different poses so they could be recognized easily on shelf as fans were flipping through the pegs looking for the newest figures. And it helped us get to that, continue that sort of superpowers lineup, and eventually we did get to all of them. But it was really cool seeing classic Dr. Fate there with, classic Flash and classic Batman making up the superpowers traditional DC team that, I think the world got introduced to this character through toys and through superpowers. That was kind of a lot of people's first introduction, was having his action figure. All right, next up we have Steel. So this is one of those figures that I actually very specifically remember how we got him into the line. So Bill Beneke, the designer, and I, we'd used up all of our tooling on Gentleman Ghost and the Parademon, and not to be confused with this Steel or maybe even these Steel figures, but rather it was this Steel, the one, well, it actually wasn't the one from the new Justice League, or Justice Society of America, but it was, I don't want to say close enough, but essentially it was a more classic version of him who was popular, and he was ahead. What I meant a moment ago when Bill Beneke and I were trying to fill the slot is we literally had a slot to fill, and we only had enough tooling for a head. That was it. And I remember specifically he and I were flipping through the DC Encyclopedia looking for characters that could be done with a head only. And I even remember joking with him saying, it's so funny, how much thought fans put into how do figures get chosen for these waves, and here we are literally flipping through the encyclopedia, simply looking for a character that we can do with a head only. That is hilarious, because we were both collectors as well, working on the line. So we wound up going with him, especially, as I said, he was in the Justice Society of America comic that was out at the time that was really good. This was the Kingdom Come line, or storyline. Definitely pick this up. It's a really great read. And, that was basically how he got chosen. He was a head only, and we had to find a figure that was going to only be a head, because that's all the tooling we had. Bill was great, though, because he also gave him this shiny paint effect, and that kind of made up for the lack of additional tooling details, and he came with the biggest part of Giganta. So that was kind of the makeup. Next up, we have our Parademon, and I'm not referring to the movie Parademon, which Mattel did do when the Justice League film came out, nor the New 52 Parademon, which also had a really cool look, but rather the classic Parademon, and not just one classic Parademon. We went all out with Parademon because, well, one, superpowers. Again, we wanted to continue that trend of building up and reproducing the entire superpowers line in DC Universe Classics. This was very deliberate and very, in the forethought of our mind. But we also wanted to do the green and yellow version, not just because it was on the JLU series, but we all loved Jack Kirby. The Four Horsemen, Bill, myself, we were huge Jack Kirby fans. So even though this was the Parademon from the Superpowers line in the vintage era, we felt that both of them really needed to be in DC Universe. And I don't know how we pulled it off, because this was like a lot of tooling, and it was the first variant that was completely different. Again, it wasn't like a deco change. They were completely different figures. I think they shared the gun, maybe. Speaking of which, the gun that this version has, not this gun. So they both came with the little gun. I'm getting ahead of myself. So the red version and the green one both had the little yellow gun, which was kind of like a sci-fi gun. There's a face only a mother could love, isn't it? That's just great. I mean, the Horsemen are amazing sculptors. But the other gun was the other half of Calibac's club. So it was originally sculpted as part of Calibac. We couldn't afford it. We couldn't fit it in. So Calibac's other attachment became the gun for the green Parademon. So you can attach it to Calibac's club if you want to see how it was originally designed. All right, fair play. Mr. Terrific. again, a favorite figure of mine from the entire line. It's amazing how many figures in this wave just simply had so many cool figures. I don't know what it is about Mr. Terrific. I just really like this character. I love characters that have, technology. He's got the T spheres. Again, a prominent role on the Justice League Unlimited show, which had just wrapped up at the time that this wave was released. And yeah, I mean, he makes a really cool toy. He's one of those figures that I think just translates really well. He's got a really cool jacket. He's got, great face makeup. And I don't know, personally, I think I'm just big on superheroes whose power is their intelligence. I don't know. People make fun of the look, but I think it's cool. I don't think it's as stupid as people say. Maybe in real life, but as a comic book costume, it looks awesome. I really think it looks awesome. At least it looks a lot more awesome than the original Mr. Terrific, who had kind of like a Robin Hood-y tights thing going on. And, this would definitely a figure that we wanted to get to eventually as well. But, doing the Michael Holt version before we did the Terry sort of a 1960s version, just kind of the way the tier spheres rolled. And like I said, he makes a cool toy. No matter which toy line, like JLU, or even when he shows up in things like Lego, he's just a really cool, visually looking character. With the black and the white and the red. I don't know. Mr. Terrific. He's a terrific figure. Oh, that sounded terrible, but it's true. And the T-spheres were removable from the back and had that cool, clear stand. So that brings us now to Giganta, the giant in the room, shall we say. And the first thing I should definitely address, well, actually, before I get to her whole head thing with Gentleman Ghost, one thing with Giganta is we were really looking at lots of different versions of her from over the years. In the JLU series, again, she had the pink outfit. I feel like I'm talking about the JLU series a lot in this wave, but I guess when you have Hawkgirl and Mr. Terrific and all of them in one wave. She was also in Super Friends, so she had a lot of history of being in sort of the kids' cartoons. And she was, prominent in the Wonder Woman comics at the time as well. She was making kind of not a comeback, but she was making some prominent appearances. And it was decided to definitely go with her classic leopard version, I think especially from the Super Friends. And as a Build-A-Figure, or a Collect and Connect figure, she was really tall. She was one of our tallest figures, which was really cool. We even did this sort of forced perspective version of her for the print ad, which I thought was really awesome, because we don't get to do that often. Usually the figures are shot straight on, so that was fun. And she looked great next to Wonder Woman. I mean, she was a great Collect and Connect figure. All right, so let me talk about the whole head thing. Oh, wait, hold on. Before I get to the head, one last thing I forgot. The Atom. She came with the Atom, which actually also came with the head, so this sort of does connect. So I believe this was a Four Horsemen edition that they threw in there that we thought, wow, this is so cool, we have to include it. Basically, this was the version of Atom that had shipped in Wave 5 for Walmart, and then this little Atom at his feet shipped with Giganta, or rather with Gentleman Ghost. Whether, this was letting people have a version of the Atom if they couldn't get the Walmart version, or the idea of putting the smallest figure with one of the biggest. Again, if memory serves, this was like a surprise the Horsemen did, and we just thought it was awesome, and we had to add it. Okay, finally, Giganta head. So yes, the head came with Gentleman Ghost. I think a lot of fans were convinced that Gentleman Ghost was short-packed, so they couldn't get the head to complete her. I will tell you that's absolutely not true. He was produced just as much as every other figure. I think he just sold better because visually he really popped on shelf. He was a ghost. Ghosts sell very good. Kids like ghosts. And, ghosts, or all toys, sold in the retail aisle are still going 80% to kids. So, looking at the lineup here, you've got a bunch of monsters and magicians and, etc. Ghosts pop, ghosts stand out, and I think he just sold really well. And the idea of doing Giganta's head is just selling just the head, that was kind of a red tape issue, because legally, because of toy safety rules and all this, you can't just sell one part without reissuing all of them. In hindsight, I kind of wish we reissued Giganta entirely and just did her in her pink outfit, and then you could pop the head off and put it on the other one. We did reissue Gentleman Ghost, but that didn't solve the issue. it just kind of got Gentleman Ghost out there again. It did not solve the lack of a Giganta head, and I kind of wish we just reissued her as a Build-A-Figure like Marvel Legends is doing now with a lot of Build-A-Figures. But that was Wave 8. Still an awesome wave, and thank you guys for collecting.